I may go into a second part with this one. This is a laptop I usually use. It's better quality, slightly higher volume and so on. So ideally I'd use this all the time, but there has been space issues on it. Another day in Trump land and another piece of nonsense, this time involving one Laura Loomer and her association with the Trump campaign. Trump's doubling down on those debunked claims about Haitian immigrants in Springfield, Ohio. I'll just touch on that first because there's been a lot of sources covering this, a lot of networks. CNN visited Springfield. There's been other sort of fact checks and so on. There are people on the right saying, oh, it's not actually debunked. There has been footage of immigrants eating animals. There was supposedly a video from Canton, Ohio, not Springfield, Ohio, Canton. I know that place. I think it's the burial place of President McKinley. That's how I know the name. But anyway, supposedly there was a woman eating some sort of goose or bird there. I don't think it's inconceivable that someone high on drugs or with mental health problems may be sort of trying to attack a wild animal. I don't think that's totally inconceivable. Drugs can make people do terrible things, but that's just speculation. I don't know what the circumstances of that are, but there is no evidence that Haitian immigrants are eating cats and dogs in Springfield, Ohio. Vance was asked about this, and he said, "Well, maybe some people have geese as pets." He was trying to worm his way out of this by saying it's not factually wrong. Basically, he'd also come under fire earlier in the day for promoting this idea. The CNN report interviewed some of the Haitian immigrants there. Now, it's important to understand that in Springfield, it's a city of about 58,000 people. There has been a big influx of Haitian immigrants, and just like the UK, there will be some tensions with that. A lot of those people say they'd rather not be there, they'd rather be in their home country. But Haiti is no surprise. There's no surprise that it's one of the worst places in the world right now. It's run by gangs, extremely violent. Of course, Haitians want to flee that situation. But to keep pushing this is vilifying an entire community, potentially putting those people in danger of, hate crimes. Because if people think, oh, they're attacking our beloved pets and they must be a threat, it's toxic. There was also a father of a little boy who was killed in a road accident. He didn't want his son to be named, and I won't do that here, but he was furious with the Trump-Vance campaign for kind of politicizing his son's death. The driver was a Haitian, but he's now in prison. So that's one thing. Those claims are just false. Okay, even if you find someone who may be eating a bird or something, it's not the same as someone eating cats and dogs. It's a very explicit claim about immigrants eating pets, and it just isn't factually true. So much of Trump's public persona in the last 10 years has been lies, just outright lies. But today I mentioned his connection with one Laura Loomer. Now, even by the standards of Trump supporters, she is utterly toxic. I've just been looking up some of her background. I hadn't heard of her before, but put it this way. Marjorie Taylor Greene, who herself is pretty controversial, pretty hard right, she herself has come under a lot of controversy. Even she says that Loomer is a liability and she's extremely racist. This is coming from Marjorie Taylor Greene. So we now have a situation where far-right Trump supporters are calling out other far-right Trump supporters for being too extreme. That's insane. That's the situation we're in. This is some of the positions that this Laura Loomer comes out with. She's a 9/11 truther for a start. So to bring her to 9/11 events is utterly tasteless. Trump was at the 23rd anniversary events this week. To bring her to those events is utterly tasteless. I also thought those Trump supporters shouting out "We love you, Donald" and stuff at a 9/11 event, that was in bad taste. It's a solemn event. Trump and Harris shook hands. It was a brief moment of civility in this circus. But, Trump supporters shouting out, can they not consider the solemnity of the occasion? It's not a chance to be getting into Trump fandom. Um, so this is some of the things that Loomer has come out with. It may as well be called loony because honestly, it's sick. Um, the 9/11 truth stuff, of course, it's an inside job, all of that, bad enough. By the way, Trump claims he doesn't know her views, but this isn't some random supporter. This is someone who was on his plane, who would have been speaking to him. So it shows, once again, well, it's one of two things. It's either Trump's complete and utter lack of judgment, or the fact that he doesn't care about being surrounded by extremists, and he just pretends he doesn't know much about them. Not for the first time. Um, Loomer has promulgated various conspiracy theories. She had falsely claimed the school shootings in Parkland, Florida, and Santa Fe, Texas, both in 2018, staged, and that the perpetrator of the Las Vegas shootings of 2017 was affiliated with ISIS. No evidence for that. He was a white guy, and he had nothing to do with ISIS. Loomer claimed on Twitter that crisis act is a horrible term we use for the Santa Fe shooting, prompting concerns about the amplification of misleading information and conspiracy theories by troll farms and social bots. It's worth bearing in mind that this woman lost a Republican race in a very red district, and she was talking about rigged elections. And this was a Republican district in a Republican primary. Democrats weren't even involved. She, like her cult figure, like her cult leader, she's obviously a sore loser. In July 2018, Loomer said that a man arrested in South Dakota with bomb-making equipment and illegal weapons had been a leftist Antifa terrorist. According to the man's social media activity at the time, and per his brother, he was a conservative who despised liberals and Antifa. During the October 2018 United States mail bombing attempts, Loomer falsely said the bombing attacks were a false flag operation orchestrated by Democrats. Loomer support Trump in the 2024 Republican primaries. She accused Casey DeSantis, wife of competing presidential candidate Ron DeSantis, of exaggerating her bout with breast cancer to boost her husband's presidential campaign. I mean, what sort of cold-blooded, evil person is this to even come out with something like that? Disgusting, absolutely disgusting. Um, and there's a whole other stream of stuff here about what she's like. She claims that Biden is dying. Uh, she's just. I mean, it would be easy to laugh at someone like this and dismiss them as a nutter. Um, but what is not so funny is the fact that this person clearly has the air of a man who could theoretically be back in the White House. Hopefully, decency will prevail and Trump will lose badly. But this is the sort of people he is listening to. I think it possibly is even more extreme than before. This is the sort of people that no sane presidential candidate, mainstream presidential candidate in modern history would have anything to do with. I remember when Obama was associated with Reverend Wright, who was pretty extreme. He was a far leftist, and that embarrassed Obama. But Obama done the decent thing and disavowed him. And Reverend Wright wasn't on the campaign trail, and that was going back some time. It wasn't like a recent association. It was embarrassing for Obama, and he did disavow those statements. Trump cannot bring himself to do this. If Trump could just come out and say, "I don't agree with what she's saying," but he won't do that because then he'll lose what he obviously assumes is an important supporter. I don't see how she is that important because she lost her election race. Um, but just the sheer manure that comes out of these far right figures is disgusting. Um, Absolutely disgusting. Um, I don't know. Like I say, if it was just some lone nut support, I mean, take someone like Alex Jones. He's an extremist, and he is. Everyone knows he's a bit off his rocket. Imagine someone like Alex Jones joining the Trump campaign. I wouldn't rule it out, right? Jones is bankrupt at the moment because he was successfully sued over his disgusting false flag conspiracy theories on Sandy Hook. But I just think what this demonstrates is there is a real heartlessness in the American hard right these days. a complete heartlessness. You see this time and time again from Trump himself, also from Vance. He was showing a young woman that had been, driven to suicidal thoughts. It was a beauty pageant, and Vance was just mocking her and laughing about it. And then when he was challenged on this and he was told what the situation had actually been, he claimed his heart goes out to her, but we need to laugh and move on. This shows the mentality of these people. I want to draw on a broader issue here, which is character. I think there's something very strange happening in the American right these days, which is there are people who know Trump is toxic. They know he is obnoxious. But there was one guy interviewed, a labourer in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, and he said the man is a lunatic. But we have to ask ourselves, do we just accept that fact and vote for him because he's good for the economy? So I think there's people that know full well Trump is a toxic character, but they will still vote for him because of this perverse idea, well, he's a good president. I don't think he was a good president, actually. But even if you think he was a good president, and it's sort of like, well, I don't like the things he says, but policy, he's good. Um, Surely character matters. Surely the mental faculties of a president matters. I think it's right that Biden stepped down. I think it was a big mistake for the Democrats to. I think they should have acted sooner. Clearly, Biden is too old for the job. I think history will probably judge him kindly. I think he had to deal with a lot of Trump's mess. I don't think he was an awful president. I don't think he'll go down as a great president. But some of the things he's attacked for example, the withdrawal from Afghanistan, Trump was absolutely going to do that as well. Um, Biden will not go down as a great president, but I think history will judge him kindly. But he was clearly too old. He should not have sought a second term. Um, that having been said, Trump, if he gets into office, will be 82 when he leaves. He's clearly unhinged at the moment. He's clearly not a stable figure. He shifts from one subject to another. He's erratic. He's not eloquent at all. Um, Even his own supporters, and I'm not talking necessarily about the really, really in-depth cult members who just believe he could do no wrong. I mean those who kind of support him because they don't like the Democrats and they want issues like immigration controlled, understandably. Even they're getting frustrated with him. They say, oh, we want him to speak more about the immigration issue, but not get detached by things like false stories about Haitians eating pets. I mean, if Trump were to talk, for example, about violent crime on the southern border, I think that would actually be legitimate. Although, politically he destroyed a bipartisan bill on that. Um, if Trump kind of spoke about mainstream issues like that, I think his campaign would do a lot better. And it poses a question, does he actually not want the responsibility? And it's almost like he doesn't really care at this point. He's just going to say whatever he wants. I almost wonder, does he not really want to win? But he's doing it because he knows that he's promised his supporters that. I mean, you have to wonder what is going on in Trumpland. Um, it's bizarre. I think that we'll see what happens when he loses. And I am quite, well, I shouldn't be too confident. Strange things happen in American politics, but let's assume he loses. He said there will be bloodshed. Now, what form will that take? I don't think we're going to see an exact repeat of January 2021 when violent extremists stormed the US Capitol. I don't think we'll see that again. For one thing, I'd imagine they've greatly increased security there. We might see something else. We might see Democratic politicians attacked. We might see election agents attacked. There might even be more subtle measures that aren't necessarily violent. There is fears, for example, that Trump may instill kind of moles into the election process to rig the results in his favour, which would just be a joke. It would make America a laughingstock if that sort of thing was going on, and it's something you expect more in um, failed states. So I just don't know where all of this is heading. Because as much as there's optimism from the Harris campaign, and here's the thing, in many ways I think she's a conventional politician. I don't agree with all of her positions. I don't agree, for example, about using taxpayers' money to fund transgender prisoners getting operations. I think that's wrong. And I think that the Democrats do need to deal with the problem of violent crime in big cities that they predominantly control. People have legitimate concerns about that. The Democrats, I think they need to do a lot more to address that problem and explain to the American people what they're going to do to address violent crime. Um, but like I say, I think Harris, it's ironic because she would make history. She'd be the first woman president. She'd be the first Indian American president. Um, Incidentally, one of the things that Loomer came out with, I mentioned already, but she's come out with racist stuff, and this is why even Marjorie Taylor Greene condemned her. Because Marjorie Taylor Greene's elected, maybe she knows she should be a bit more, comparatively speaking, diplomatic. I don't know. But I mean, I just find that astonishing. Someone like Marjorie Taylor Greene has to call her out. Um, this is what she said about. See if I could just get this segment on Kamala Harris. Where are we here? Just trying to find the segment. There really is a litany of toxicity that's common. I mean, it's astonishing. I'm trying to find the section. I'm looking at the Wikipedia article. I'm trying to find the section on um, on her views on Kamala Harris. You know, because some people might hear, "Oh, she's accused of racism," and it's vague. This is explicitly racist. I mean, I don't think it makes sense. Otherwise, where are we? Where is the section? 50, 34. I want to misquote, so I don't know if I want to quote directly. Where are we? Anyway, I'll just basically she said that if Harris becomes president, um, basically I'll just say it. The White House is going to smell like curries, right? Because Harris is of Indian and American. That I mean, that's just the sort of mindset this person has, and you know there'll be White House calls will be directed to call centers. You know, obviously a reference to an Indian stereotype. It's just these people I'm talking about, Trump's far right supporters, are just sick. Actually, there's a deep nastiness about them, which is and Trump shows his complete lack of judgment by failing to call them out, by failing to distance himself from them. And you know what's twisted? If one of them was to go out and commit a violent crime, Trump would probably condemn it initially, but then he'd calm down and say, "Oh, I didn't know her. She wasn't really that close to me. I don't know who she is." This Trump's a card in some ways. You know, he always distances himself from these people after courting them, after taking their endorsements. If I was running for president of the United States, I would want to know who a key donor is. I would want to know who's traveling on the plane with me. And it just reiterates Trump's complete lack of judgment and why this man shouldn't be anywhere near the White House. I think character does matter in a president. And yes, you can look at American history. There's certainly been a lot of dubious characters, right? JFK and Bill Clinton were womanizers. Richard Nixon was incredibly corrupt. Warren Harding's administration was corrupt. Um, Woodrow Wilson had racist views, as did Andrew Jackson. You know, so you could find a litany of character flaws among American presidents, but no one in American history, no president has come close to Trump in terms of the way he has courted extremists. I just think he is uniquely bad. Um, Other presidents can be criticized for their policies, sometimes deeply controversial policies. I mean, we look at the Bush era, we look at the wiretapping of American citizens and, you know, deeply controversial foreign wars. And that is what it is. That's part of his legacy. That can be criticized. But in terms of how they approach the US Constitution, how they approach democracy, how they approach discourse, no one comes close to Trump. Um, and that's striking. Anyway, I'm going to wrap this up, but if Trump had any integrity, he doesn't. I don't think he has any personal integrity, but if he did, he would look at who's supporting him and he would say, I do not agree with Laura Loomer. I don't want her in my campaign. She's not welcome on my plane. And he's not going to do that, but she probably has some sort of contingent that Trump thinks will be useful for him. I mean, that should say everything. The fact that someone running for president of the United States is actually courting far right votes. It's disgusting.